Hello and welcome to this third in the series of portal webinars for UK education leaders entitled How to Increase Student Recruitment by Improving Applicant Community, Commitment and Conversion. Today we focus on the challenge in student recruitment in both FE and HE, a best practice solution from other sectors and the results that it's bringing right here to UK education institutions. We're delighted to welcome you as part of 150 education leaders across the UK to this interactive webinar. We'd love to keep your engagement throughout this hour across Twitter, which you can see at the bottom there is hashtag ESE webinar. And indeed, you can find me on my handle, which is at KalenUK. Okay, let's get started. Looking at the agenda and indeed introducing myself, I'm Kalen Hargrave, Head of Education here at Portal, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this webinar. There's three main objectives that I have for us. Firstly, to discuss thought leadership around the challenges with student recruitment and indeed student engagement through their recruitment, as well as providing research around those topics. Secondly, I really want to showcase best-in-class organizations and what they are using to address this challenge. And thirdly, I really want to empower you to make sure you've got everything you need to make a positive change back at base with your teams in your own institutions. I'm also delighted to welcome two star-studded speakers to our lineup. Firstly, Martin Hawksey, who is Chief Innovation, Community and Technology Officer at the Association of Learning Technology. We are delighted to have Martin joining us, representing over 1,500 members and 200 organizations to really give us a wide-sweeping industry view from a learning technology point of perspective, specifically on that engagement with students in the prospective journey. In addition, we have the wonderful Di Roberts, Principal and CEO of outstanding Ofsted Grade 1 institution, Brockenhurst College, in the heart of the New Forest. Di is also Deputy Chair of the Association of Colleges, representing hundreds of institutions in the further education market across the UK. I'm delighted to welcome both of me to help pioneer this webinar for you to make sure you've got a valuable and insightful experience with us over the next hour. Now, you'll notice that in the GoToWebinar panel, just on the right-hand side, you've got a questions box. We would love to get your questions throughout this webinar, and I'll be sure to weave them into our discussion as we move through. One question I always get asked, and I can see one is in there already, is that will this webinar be recorded? And I absolutely will. We'll ensure we share this recording with you after the webinar, and indeed, you're welcome to share that with colleagues and reflect on it in your own way. Of course, do keep through your questions coming through, but also on Twitter as well as your GoToWebinar panel. With that, let us get started with the time that we have available. So looking at the agenda, I'm going to kick off with support from Martin in just a few minutes' time, really around the student recruitment and engagement challenge. Thinking across the research we're seeing in the sector, the engagement we have with education, what is the synthesis of this growing challenge in student recruitment and indeed engaging students through the recruitment cycle. I'm then going to take some time to show you best-in-class social collaboration technologies, indeed applied to applicant engagement. And I want to show you that best practice experience through the eyes of one prospective learner, and then show you behind the emerald curtain what the solution overview is, how it works in the real world. Di is very kindly then going to take over and share with you their case studies, their story of why they pioneered this with us as a lighthouse client and partner, but also what are the benefits they're seeing on the ground that have already been delivered from taking this step in addressing this challenge. I'm then going to take over and give you a demonstration of that system so you can see at a really deep dive level how learners are interacting with it, how a culture has adopted it, and what the results have really been from it. I'll then tie off with a summary and some next steps, and then we'll get into any unanswered questions at the back end of this webinar. But again, keep them coming through as we move onward. So with that in mind, let's get started. Thinking about a real common phrase, the perfect storm. I'm hearing that so often now across the education sector. And we believe it's down to this combination of challenges. Firstly, increase in competition. There are new entrants to both the FE and the higher education market across the UK and indeed beyond it. There's huge challenges in schools. Now there's an increased participation age encroaching upon FE, and in turn, FE providing HE and FE courses encroaching upon typical university provision. And with both of those items, there's increased choice and indeed increasing complexity for learners in which pathway they really choose to get to their career destinations. Likewise, there's higher expectation coming from particularly the digital native generation. Those prospects are demanding the best campus experience and far richer outcomes than they ever have before. Not just around academic excellence, but indeed making sure there's a great social experience on campus and there's richer destinations from them beyond. And whether they are putting time, money, or both, they are looking for significant value for money from their commitment to your education institute. And thirdly, falling demographic. The Office of National Statistics tells us that the age range of our prospects, or those in the age range of our prospects, is set to fall by 13% by 2021. And though I recognize this is going to have greater geographical significance for some of you and more than others, this is something that's affecting us all. We are going to have to work harder and smarter to get a larger slice of a shrinking pie. But combining these three challenges together with, unstable political climate, shifting funding allocations, and all the other resource challenges we have, it truly is a perfect storm. So with that, how do we increase student recruitment? And I want to be really specific about the purpose of this webinar. This is not a marketing webinar. This is not about how do we, send out more emails or get better response rate to our Twitter activity in student recruitment. That's not what this is about. This is about how do we engage with our prospective student market in a social conversation to collaborate and connect groups of students and indeed students and staff members together to keep really rich, warm activity and engage with them to help with conversion. And really, it comes to two factors as to how we can impact that: marketing impact and the learner experience. So let's cover these in turn. From a marketing perspective, of course, you're going to be doing some form of marketing. Even those that are the most cash-strapped, you're going to have some kind of activity going on. But what is it that you're currently doing? Typically we're finding that it's blanket messaging going out from the institution. Whatever the communications method, it's typically a bland and blanket message that is designed to fill the funnel. How do we get, our name out there in order to put more people in the top of the pipe? And it no longer is that going to be a sustainable strategy, because even if you are filling the funnel more than you were originally, there are less people for you to fill it with. So you're unlikely to get the same number of student headcount at the bottom of the funnel. In terms of social media, which is one of the most common tools to engage in a conversation with recruits, there is typically social media presence, but it is not influential. It is typically very bland and very inconsistent. So whether it's coming from a centralized social group from marketing, or whether you've decentralized in terms of having curriculum lead their own Facebook and Twitter presence, typically it's inconsistent and it's barraging messages that are of no personalized factor to the prospective student market. With that, given that those activities happen outside of the institute's walls, given that they are beyond the open day, they're beyond the application, they are within social and publicly available communities, there's limited control. You cannot control the damage that your reputation can suffer within those realms. You can barely influence it. So that limited control is a factor to be considered. But in addition, there's limited data. How can we really pull information from the impact of that reputational punch and actually make sure we can use it to change the way in which we work for the better? This is a real batch and blast typical approach. We see this so often across education, and it's not a criticism. It's just not good enough anymore in order to lift yourself up out of the noise and actually get a larger market share than you ever had before, and indeed meet those rising expectations from the student demographic. We think about moving across to what you could be doing. And again, this is commonly seen across retailers. How can we offer differentiation and diversification at scale? We can't go to market with a me too message anymore. It has to be something that makes you different. But given limited resources, how do we get that different at a scalable way to go across thousands of applicants that you may have and indeed drive conversion? Not just filling the funnel, driving conversion. And our view is that conversion should be the word on every member of staff's lips across the institution, almost throughout the entire year, given that everyone has a responsibility for recruitment now, not just the marketing team. Reputational eminence is another one that I think is really undervalued across education, but has really grown in value across many other fields. If we think about, a big sporting event or a big TV event, typically people are turning to those social channels in order to have a holistic conversation with random strangers that really invites them to get a deep immersion into that experience, whether it's, comparing statistics about tennis players, or whether it's, casting your opinion on the latest X Factor singer. Whatever it is, you are engaged, you feel more prideful, and therefore you're more likely to attend that event in future. And the same can be applied to education. How can we harness the reputational eminence of our students, current students, and staff members to ensure the message they are delivering to the external world is a positive one, and we can utilize their networks of influence to draw in our recruitment funnel? Self-organized groups are a far better way of approaching social collaboration, allowing students to create their own random and open connections as opposed to compounding curriculum silos. And with that, if we keep that social collaborative message inside the institution with the same social freedoms that Twitter or Facebook would give you, but keep them on the inside of the walls, we've got far richer control of what happens and indeed far greater influence. But we can also capture more data, far richer data, to empower us in order to identify and target those individuals in a much greater way. Thinking about the learner experience, again, you will be doing something, across that keep warm participation activity from a learner's first application right to enrollment. You're going to have several activities. They'll probably include summer schools and a range of other factors. Our research shows that less than 15% of summer school registrants actually attend, and we all know they are the goodies that you were going to get anyway. Hence, the return on investment for those kind of activities is really poor. But thinking about the emotional state of that prospective student market, they feel isolated, they feel anxious. How are they going to adapt to your culture, your campus, maybe a different city, and maybe a different experience, and certainly a higher level of learning from their previous? It can be a real delicate emotional state, and very few institutions really consider the emotional impact of the decision-making process and influence it accordingly. From a curriculum basis, some institutions send out reading lists to help students prepare in advance and to be successful on course. But again, it's only applying to the goodies. If we could get the right content to those students that most need it to make the biggest impact for the fresh academic year, we'd have far greater attainment and success rates for sure. With that in mind, there tends to be inconsistent expectations. Some learners come to campus expecting the world, some come expecting nothing. And typically, you're not going to meet either of those expectations. But if we're able to appropriately connect with that community, we're able to align our expectations and indeed ensure that we have a more successful course on-ramp. Static communications happen infrequently, inconsistently, and indeed have very little impact, creating this point and press approach. We're pointing at individual, isolated prospective learners and pressing them for their conversion. And typically it can be quite a pressurized approach. What you could be doing is something very different. I'm going to demo this in just a second, but allowing students not to come to infrequent activities, but to have a continuous and self-paced engagement with the institution. If you make it the learner's responsibility to engage with you and provide them a platform to do so, you're not only empowering your internal resources, but giving them a far more personalized service and changing their emotional state. They can be more confident, they can be more assured if they're able to connect with other learners in advance, if they are able to balance their aligned expectations, and indeed feel part of a community before they ever arrive. Offering interactive curriculum really empowers their information, advice, and guidance to get them to the right course way ahead of their application, such that you can be more successful and, again, increase the emotional state of the prospect. I mentioned about aligned expectations, but they have such a powerful influence that's really undervalued. If learners understand what is required of them and indeed what service they're going to get delivered, they're going to be far more informed to make the best decision of which institute they're going to go for. And they're going to choose yours over someone who has not chosen to set expectations at all. Offering anywhere, anytime, any device connectivity for learners to your institution is critical. Static communications are no longer going to be of benefit, but continuous nuggets of tiny bite-sized pieces are going to be the place, again, wherever a learner wants to have it. And again, this empowers us to identify and connect with learners so we can get like-minded groups of learners together to empower all of their decision-making process. So across those two aspects, this really boils down to, having rich keep warm activity and encouraging participation of prospects with you in an engagement channel. And they form this key for us in terms of how we increase student recruitment by improving applicant community, commitment, and conversion. So with that in mind, that's my perspective in terms of where this is coming from. And one other point I really want to make is this growing research that we're finding. It was a minor problem last year, but we are predicting it's going to be a fantastically large problem this coming academic year. We interviewed a whole range of prospective students from across the country in different institutions, both FE and HE. And what we're seeing from the digital native generation is the decision-making process of which institution they're going to place their educational career at is happening far later in the education cycle. So yes, they've made multiple applications for years, but now we're seeing multiple enrollments and indeed attending multiple institutions in the first few weeks of the academic year to really get a taste of which one is going to be best for me. So I know which one I've got friends at, which one I feel I can be successful at, and which one I'm getting the best experience. So, whereas traditionally we've rested on our laurels in many ways and relied upon if they've come to enrollment, we've got them, I think we're going to find this year early retention is going to be a huge problem if we've not taken the time to appropriately engage, build loyalty and pride within our prospects months beyond, or before rather, enrollment procedure. With that in mind, though, let me pass over to Martin in order to give his perspective from the Association of Learning Technology. You may well know they represent 1,500 members. They have over 200 organizations. And the three main missions are to improve practice, promote research, and indeed influence policy. I'll allow Martin to give his perspective on this student recruitment and engagement challenge. Martin.
Thanks, Kieran. As Kieran said, my name's Martin Hoxie. I work as Chief Innovation and Community Officer at the Association for Learning Technology. We're in perhaps an interesting space as a membership organisation for learning technologists. We get to see many of the wonderful and interesting things our members are getting up to, but at the same time, these are challenges that, as a membership organisation, we also have to face ourselves. So in terms of student engagement, it's really interesting to consider just how much has changed in the last couple of years. We've gone from a situation where learning has been predominantly done within institutions, so within the security of the physical closed walls. And now what we're seeing is this becoming very much unbounded. We're seeing a thinning of those walls. So it's no longer about what is just happening within your institution, within your classrooms. There is so much going on beyond your institution. There's so much more interaction between students, prospective students, not happening at opening days, not happening in the classroom. But this whole idea of a more open space for learning, I think, is one where we also have to consider how the learner feels about it. So actually, the whole process of learning can be incredibly exposing. To share your concepts of knowledge can be quite a daunting prospect, particularly if you're learning something new. And what we're seeing or trying to do within our own organisation is actually provide a continuum. So, we do still have closed spaces where there's a lot more confidence in saying what you want. But as you gain confidence, those walls can thin down and incorporate more open spaces, so more of the social web. Mentioning social, it's interesting to think how social is very much different now. So, previously, social was very much a physical experience of people coming together. For example, demonstrations. It's quite easy to see a crowd of people at a demonstration almost having a similar voice, but still, relationships within that crowd. With social, you don't have that physical connection. The number of people I know that I've only ever met virtually is huge, and it's very much harder to actually get a sense of a virtual crowd. So who is in that crowd, actually getting information back about what the views, ideas within that crowd is a lot harder, and the tools to help us do that are still evolving. Within this virtual space, you've also got the recommendation that we get from our physical world, but it's now in different spaces. Previously I could, if a friend of mine was asking where to go to study, I could sit him down and tell him, my experiences. But now with a more social online audience, those recommendations come from a number of sources, and it's not that one-to-one connection anymore. It's a distributed recommendation. And with these different spaces, there's different values placed on them. You think about marketing. So previously, for advertising, you can place ads, in a number of places. But because we have these recommendation networks forming, it's not just about places where you can put your ad. It's actually the people become your advert. So just as I would, recommend to my friend a course to go to, now I can go on Twitter and I can share my thoughts about a course to thousands of people. And and it's also not just the student, it's the staff. They become the marketeer for you, which I think a lot of institutions haven't really cottoned on to yet. The idea that basically anyone that you have contact with can portray your organization in a positive way. Equally, they can portray your organization in a negative way. One of the related challenges to this is whether or not you take a proactive or a reactive approach to this. So, you can respond to comments that people direct towards you, but are you monitoring the comments not directed towards you? And I think a lot of institutions perhaps aren't looking at this dynamic as closely as they should be. So I think there's a lot of work. I think there's a lot of opportunity with exploring what you can do with student engagement in those spaces. I think for us, essentially allows us to make our own future. And I don't think it takes much. I've spent an entire career of just being that tiny bit ahead of everyone else. So a tiny amount ahead on the curve can put you far ahead of your competitors. So back to you, Kevin.
Thank you so much, Martin. I really appreciate that oversight on behalf of the Association of Learning Technology. What a great viewpoint in terms of some of the points I was noting down there. Students and prospects are connecting more than they ever have before. But are we really listening to who is connected? And more importantly, what are they saying about your brand, and how can we best leverage it? I think the power of the peer recommendation, I'm fully in agreement with Martin, is one that's significantly undervalued. We think about the retail sector, for instance. A marketing message that goes out typically is only trusted by less than 9% of people who hear it, whereas a peer recommendation with the same message, over 90% impact. So those same methodologies apply right here to the education sector for those that are brave enough and wise enough to actually acknowledge them. Thank you. My thanks to Martin. And indeed, if you want to continue the conversation with the Association of Learning Technology, it can only promote the membership organization that they are. And indeed, you can sign up to a member from the ALT website. Now, do keep your questions coming through. We've got some great ones coming through already. So Nicholas from the Open University asks, what is the age range for the prospect age? And that's a great question, Nicholas. Thank you. Really, we don't really define that. That's down to the institution themselves. Depends on what your market is. For Brockenhurst, for example, and I'll pass over to Di in a little while, it's around the 16 to 18-year-old market, but also adult provision and indeed international provision. So the age range is very varied. There are some other institutions we have that actually use social collaboration and indeed applicant engagement to connect with widening participation activities. So year 9 students, for instance, that a university might reach out to, you may want to keep a connection with in order to feed the pipeline for later. Thanks so much for your question, Nicholas. Another one from Thomas in Preston. At what point is it too late to target learners who have applied but then withdrawn their application or not attended their interviews? A great question, Thomas. Thank you so much. It's a really interesting one. From our research, and I mean from a portal standpoint here, we found that actually the challenge with withdrawal or non-attendance at interviews is primarily down to the fact of lack of engagement. If you are more engaged with those learners further ahead of the education cycle, they feel more committed to you and hence are more likely to attend an interview and not suffer the consequences of not doing so. And that's the entire focus of this social collaboration piece. Let me walk through into showing that in more detail. But as I said, do keep your questions coming through in the GoToWebinar chat panel. Let me move on and show you the behind the scenes, so to speak, in terms of how we increase student recruitment by improving applicant community, commitment and conversion through this keep warm and through this encouragement of participation. We built this applicant engagement. We've co-created this with Brockenhurst College in order to be a social collaboration platform that really offers a window into an experience at the Institute, helping develop a friendship network, engage students and academics on campus before they ever arrive. Let me make that really real for you with a really rich example. So Jane here is a prospective student, again, whatever age range you would define. She is a digital native. She is wanting to move into biological research, and she's obsessed with basketball. Now, we might have that information from her recruitment journey, or indeed from an application form, depending on what information you capture. But let's go through a series of quick steps that's just going to show you very lightly the kind of system that we're talking about, the kind of innovation. But I will go into much more detail later when I give you the Brockenhurst demonstration. So first and foremost, upon application, Jane is going to receive an email that invites her to this social campus in the cloud. Here, she's got a pre-populated profile that's been collected from application and social media, and we've already connected her with a range of content that we know she's going to be interested in. So here she has this kind of Twitter, smashed with Facebook, smashed with LinkedIn, smashed with a VLE type environment that really allows her to look at content and, more importantly, connect with people. Here we can see this kind of river of updates that are coming through, and we can see Alex Reddy, the biology lecturer, has actually set some curriculum content up so she can actually explore that. If she pops into the hamburger menu just in the top left-hand corner, she's able to see a whole range of different pre-formatted functions, so she can really explore around the app, which is available on mobile, tablet, or indeed, and of course, desktop. She can then pop into a range of communities, some of which are curriculum, like microbiology, some of which are standard, like an applicant FAQ. And if she pops into microbiology, she can see Alex again offering some content. Click his name and see more profile information about him and follow his activity. So she can now follow all of his updates about things that are going on campus within biology, because we know that's what she's interested in. If that's connecting with curriculum, really the additional importance is connecting with other students. So here she can go into microbiology, click on members about halfway down, and actually see other students from her feeder school, from her hometown, or current students that are already on campus, like Alberto. She can click on his profile, see more information about him, and indeed invite to her network, because she might have a few more questions that she wants to ask about microbiology. She can connect with him and then have an instant chat conversation to help her answer those little nuggets of questions that she'll have throughout the journey. In terms of connecting with staff members, connecting with learners, this is really about connecting with content. So, of course, we can go to communities and we connect with curriculum content. But one of the biggest factors we have found in terms of conversion is social content. So the curriculum content really allows Jane to set appropriate expectations, get that information, advice, and guidance, and help her be on track for a successful career with the Institute. But it's integration with things like the basketball team that are going to help with her conversion in the recruitment journey. If she feels committed to this environment, here she's been invited to join the basketball team before she ever arrives on campus. She can actually see videos of them training and see the results from the North County finals, whatever those things might be. She might even see a blog from the captain of the team, in this case, Rachel. So she can engage with all of that community and start building that network of friends months before she actually arrives on campus to really help her develop that pride. That's a quick understanding. As I said, I'm going to dive more into it a little bit later. If I take a slightly wider view, again, looking behind the curtain of applicant engagement, what really goes on is three aspects: profile, community, and network. Let's look at those in turn. So in terms of the profile, we really want to forge that from application and social media data. So whatever data that you have on the learner, whatever we can get publicly, we will build a profile. So the first time they join is dynamic and immersive. That's going to help us develop that loyalty. Unlike your students that are forced to use your VLE, for instance, here, if the first time isn't a good time, then they're not going to come back. And it's so critical to have a good time. Hence, we put so much effort into making sure we don't only pre-populate their profile, but it's available wherever, on whatever device they are on. And again, this can be in different languages and it can be in different time zones if you're internationally recruiting. In terms of the community, this is very much about being people-centric. The applicant engagement module is not a virtual learning environment. It is a social recruitment vehicle in which it is very people-centric. It has a lot of commonality with a VLE, granted, but has more communicative and collaborative tools to really empower everyone to connect and share securely in the cloud. And with that, we can make sure that we are offering a range of different social tools, some of which you'll know from old: files, wikis, forums. These are commonplace within not only social media networks, but indeed within your own internal learning systems. But things like ideation blogs, surveys, video media, whatever it might be, instant chat, those are all items that are not usually present and certainly not people-centric within this environment. Too many VLEs are too file-centric, in our opinion, and indeed that of everyone I've come across so far. Here, and hopefully you'll agree later, it's all about the person and their social status. In terms of the network, yes, we want to have curriculum content, we want to connect people in communities, but we want to make sure that central to the engagement is networking people together with flowing social updates and really connecting communities to build lasting relationships so they can have knowledge sharing, they can share opinions and insight to really build those connections and opinions. We want to make sure they can get instantaneous support, where they're not waiting a week for you to return an email as a barrier for them with 16 different data points you require in an inquiry form before you get the question answered. Those barriers stop the relationship that we really need with our prospective community. But if we had instant chat on this collaborative platform, it's empowering quick, fast, and very impactful ways of getting knowledge and expectations across. Thirdly, friendship circles are so important, not only to make sure that learners feel supported, but actually to understand who are the friendship circles, who are the influential kingpins in their feeder schools, that if we can recruit that individual, we'll bring 8 more people with them. And if we can collect that data, how would we leverage it? And lastly, academic expectations. Let's be really clear here. This is a shop window for your education institute in which you can lay out all of the goodies that you offer, whether that is curriculum courses, your most innovative academic teaching staff, your inspirational campus experience, whatever that might be. But academic expectations are so important, as mentioned before, in making sure learners understand what is expected of them and what service you're going to be giving them to help with their success on course. So those are the aspects that really make up applicant engagement. And indeed, I'll show you more of that as we dive into the Brockenhurst live detail. Let me just cover a few more of your questions. And again, please keep them coming through. Kylie from Bucks has asked, would the system talk to an existing CRM to get the profile data? Kylie, it absolutely will. We've worked with so many systems, whether it's your tribal products, your Capita, your EBS, anything that you've got, we will integrate with. The only thing we need is an open API or web services or some form of exporting the data out of your central CRM system. There are very, very few that limit that. So it's never been a problem for any of the instances that we've had so far. Thanks so much for your question. We have another question, and the comment rather. The potential is impressive, but the resource in getting contribution and buy-in is what will make it work. Any hints and tips from users on this issue? It's a phenomenal question, and I must say a really common problem. Too many academic institutions throw too much money at too many technology products and don't put in the time to ensure that it's culturally adopted to bring the value out the other side. We've all seen a flashy presentation from a lovely salesman, but typically it's those that actually take the time with cultural adoption in the delivery that become the successful projects. One thing that we've really learned from in our delivery so far. So over 60% of the services days that we provide are about cultural adoption. And I do have a couple of hints from you from our experience. So the first one is don't engage all staff members. Not all staff members will want to be available and would be appropriate to put in the shop window for your external community. Let's pick a champion network of the best and brightest from across each curriculum area to represent their specific rounds. Another hint we found really helpful is that actually students make the best content generators. Your current students, provided with a smartwatch or a mobile phone, and we've done that before, we say you have to create 3 blogs, 10 forum questions, and answer 40 questions a month. And if you do that, then we'll give you this device for free. Typically, that gets your top student representatives to engage in this community, and that peer recommendation is so strong. They'd be the 2 hints I would give. Thanks so much for your question. Another question I have, do Brock use the app just for 16 to 18-year-olds or apprentices, part-time adults as well? How hard was it to get buy-in from the curriculum staff? A great question for Brockenhurst specifically, and indeed, I'll let Di cover that in more detail later, but I want to answer your question. It was used for 16 to 18-year-olds in the first instance from a trial point of view because of the digital native generation piece there. We have expanded out to apprentices and part-time adults, as well as their HE and FE provision too. And we've got, 90-year-old yoga classes, 90-year-old yoga students in yoga classes that are a part of this applicant community. It really, really drives adoption. There is naturally a difference between the participation and engagement of a 16-year-old as opposed to other demographics. However, it has always proved helpful to those that have used it from all the feedback that we've gained so far. In terms of the second part of your question, how do we get buy-in from curriculum staff? I think, more often than not, it's about communication. We want to communicate with staff. This is something innovative and new that we're doing. The reason why we're doing it is to grow the student numbers so we don't suffer, staff redundancies, of which a third of colleges in the UK have had to go through because of that challenge. I think unifying staff together in a single cause and explaining that actually if we bind together and to solve this problem, we're all going to be able to come out of it on top. Thanks so much for your questions. And again, do keep them coming through, and I'll make sure they're answered ongoing. So if I move back to our agenda, I've covered the best practice experience and indeed the solution overview. And now let me hand over to Di Roberts, Principal and CEO of outstanding Ofsted Grade 1 institution, Brockenhurst College, to really share her perspective on the why and the how. Di.
Thank you, Kaylin, and hello to everyone here joining us for the webinar. Just a little bit about Brock College, as we are known. We have about 3,000 16 to 18 students, 1,000 apprenticeships, 5,000 part-time adults, and 600 full-time equivalent staff. We have a 22 million annual turnover, and as Kaylin has said, we are graded outstanding by Ofsted. As you know, though, we are working in a very challenging environment financially and indeed with competition. We have a very competitive neighbourhood of schools and colleges, and their marketing activities are becoming stronger literally by the day. So we wanted to look at something that was really going to make us stand out from the crowd, something that would also enable us to connect with our students and bring them into our family before they started at the college. In terms of the engagement situation then here at Brock, we have in our local area 6 schools who are 11 to 18, so they have 6 forms. We have a 6th form college that is 11 miles away, and a general further education college that is just down the rail tracks in Bournemouth. To the north of our recruitment area, we've got a new UTC, and there's also last September been the opening of a 6th form free school. So a highly competitive market, and one that our reputation still enables us to stand out. But equally, what we didn't want to do is stand still. So we connected with Portal, and we have really developed what I think is the most innovative and exciting project to reach out to our prospective learners, engage with them, and, as I said previously, draw them into the family. The challenge, of course, is meeting rising student expectations and keeping warm. So once we've actually engaged with those students, keeping warm is a fine art. Certainly, what we've looked at is how do students, how do young people and adults actually engage with the world? It's social networking. They are so connected, whether that's through Facebook, whether that's through Twitter, whether that's through the whole range of social media. Interestingly, we also deliver A-levels with a partner school in China, and we are embracing our Chinese students with this same technology, and they're really excited because, again, in China, they work very much through their equivalent of Facebook, which is called QQ. So in terms of social networking, it really is an area of influence, and it is the most effective way, we think, of reaching out to those students, to those prospective students, and making sure that we gain their interest. Once we have their application, we continue to work with them to keep them engaged with the college and learn about them, which means when they do join us, we can provide the most effective support, we can put them into social groups, and this will have certainly an impact on early retention, which is very much our increased focus. So the approach that we have taken, the Brock engagement approach, we invite our prospective students, so as soon as they have made any contact, or indeed to have visited our website or have had any engagement with us at all, to connect in the cloud. And it's an appealing way, rather than, the old-fashioned way, we write them letters or we send them an email. Soon as they touch us, even briefly, we then are starting to engage with them through this really exciting collaborative platform. We use gamification to engage with them. So, for instance, if they are signing up, say, three or more friends, they will get some special badges. So we really start to get them tuned in but starting to enjoy their interaction with Brockenhurst. We talk very much when we're talking about learning around students enjoying that learning experience. But actually, in terms of engaging with them right at the very early stages, we sometimes forget that. And this is really important, we think, in getting them to enjoy that very first contact with Brock, become excited about being in the Brock family, and indeed wanting then to invite their peers to join. And as you will know, certainly peer pressure can have a significant influence. Say there's a group of friends at school, you get the leader of that little group of friends. Quite often, if they apply to a school or a college, the rest of those friends will follow. What we want to do is make sure that they are following through to Brockenhurst College. It allows students to really build a supportive community. You'll know that when students start at a new institution, one of the things they're really concerned about is, will I make friends? Will I have a friendship network? With this engagement, collaborative system, students will be making friends before they even step over our doorstep. And that really is going to give them the confidence. It's going to give them that security, so that when they arrive on that very first day, they have a connection, they have a friendship group, they have their support community. It also allows us to really give them impactful information, advice, and guidance. So if they're coming onto our website and they're leaping around in a little bit of a random way, what we can do is we can reach out to them and we can start to give them guidance, start to engage with them. What are your ambitions? What are your interests? And we can then be giving them advice and guidance, again, before they even put in an application form. So important in enabling us right from the very beginning to get the students on the right course. And as everyone knows, that is a key factor in them staying and being successful. And doing this is going to not only personalise our engagement with all our prospective students, but it's giving us such a significant, greater impact from a limited marketing spend. This is going to transform our marketing. You may put a billboard up on a station, you may put an advert on the radio, but that's often lost within the noise of what else is going on. This is so personal. This is so engaging. We really think it will transform how we approach marketing, and indeed will have a significant impact on their success when they come to us. For instance, we'll be able to identify their learning styles. So before they actually come in and do their tests, so we can find out more about them, we will, through this system, be able to know whether they're visual learners. And one of the things that we have found through our predictive analytics project that we're also doing with Portal is that visual learners who come to us with an average GCSE score are actually more likely to drop out than a similar student with the same GCSE score who has a different learning style. Now, we know that before they even start with us, so we can flag them as more at risk, we can put in support for them, we can really make sure that we don't lose them either in those first important 42 days when we are then losing significant funding, but equally in supporting them right the way through their time here at the college so they are as successful as possible. It will also mean that they have this inner circle of friends as soon as they arrive, and we could look at putting them in tutor groups with some of those circle of friends, again giving them that very strong supportive network that stops them worrying about those sorts of factors and allows them to concentrate on the learning. So we are obviously, we've set targets for this project. Our governors are very much interested in, what return are they going to get on the investment. So we have set targets to improve recruitment by 15% and our reputation by 30%. And Kayleen will be able to supply more details around this case study later on. But we are absolutely confident that this really is going to make such a difference in terms of our engagement and support for students, a difference in retention and success, significant opportunity for us to be streets ahead of our competition. But ultimately, it will mean that we have learners on the right course, we have learners who are set up for success, and learners who really belong to our Brock family as soon as they make contact with us. So, our secret to success? Building relationships with prospective students to aid their decision, develop the best expectations, and then really set them up for success. I'll now hand back over to Kayleen.
Thank you so much, Di, for that really inspirational and insightful view of the Brockenhurst story. Now, on behalf of Portal, we've been delighted to pioneer in our partnership with Brockenhurst College to create this kind of difference that Di has just really walked you through in terms of the way in which they're able to reorganize and arguably revolutionize the way in which they recruit and onboard learners into the institution, which is surely going to provide an exceptional student experience for the individuals and better business results for Brockenhurst. Thank you so much for that, Di. Okay, I've got some more of your questions coming through, and please do keep them coming through. Thomas asks, did all applicants get invited to join the network? And if so, what percentage actually joined and furthermore actively used it? Great question, Thomas. Thank you so much. What we've been doing over this academic year is really a lot of trials. So we've really been using the applicant engagement environment for the 16 to 18-year-olds and being able to use it for a smaller subset to really test and make sure that we could get success from it, because that then helps us promote it and gain the cultural adoption across the rest of the institution. Naturally, it's not one of those things you can always do in a big bang approach, depending on the institution. But the percentage, as I understand it, of those that we have seen from our research so far is that of 100% of people that are invited, 65% of people will use it 3 or more times, and about 25% of people will use it almost bi-daily. It becomes very, very addictive, so to speak, in terms of they're really active members. So we are really happy with those conversion numbers. You're never going to get everyone, but actually being able to engage with even 65% of your applicants is 65% more than most of the current strategies, as we kind of referred to earlier. Sarah for Cirencester asks, which student record system do Brock use? Good question. Brockenhurst actually use a homegrown system that they call Emily, which is the management learning environment, I think. And it's a homegrown system that isn't really built upon any of the traditional systems that we would know. And Portal have worked with loads of colleges. So we've been through all of, your EBS, your SITs, your other systems from Tribal and Capita, and the usual sort of top 6. So we can integrate with all of them in turn. Okay, question from Rachel or Raquel from Westminster. What percentage of applicants is it anticipated really engage more than once with this app? So as I said, about 65% of those students that we tend to invite tend to be there more than 3 times. Thomas from Preston asks, what age do Brock engage with 16 to 18 year learners from? Is it year 9? That's a great question. Again, at the moment we've trialled, but certainly the Brockenhurst ambition is to offer it out for all of their school outreach work. If you're in FE, you'll know that most of the schools in your local region are kind of shutting the doors and keeping their students prisoner to retain onto that funding for the extra 2 years, so to speak. So you can't always go in and do talks in the way you always did. Now, and with this, Brockenhurst are able to connect with learners through the devices in which they're immersed in. Additional question from Anonymous. Some senior management do not feel that social media adds major benefit. How do you respond to this question? Good question. We often get this from senior management. I think that the real key factor we've found that's unlocked that door is the business case. Is there a business case around this? Social media might look, as not as impactful through a senior management team member's eyes than it can for maybe those that are on the front line. But we have always been successful in producing a fairly phenomenal business case, which very quickly changes their mind. You heard Di there say that they're expecting a 15% increase in recruitment. Now, that is 450 additional headcount through the door, at 3,600 per headcount in government funding. That is no small business case that we're starting to create in terms of reaching out to this audience. So we very quickly find that it's that tends to drive it. Okay, thanks for your questions. Keep them coming through. Now let me move on to our demonstration. So if I just flick my windows just for a second, and I want to walk you in through the system that we've created. So let me be really clear. We have taken all of the content, storylines, and some of the characters from the Brockenhurst environment, but we're not able to show you their live system to protect sensitive personal information of those prospects and indeed staff members that are currently using it. So we have recreated it and called it Innovatech eCampus, but it keeps a lot of those same freedoms. So here, if I log in as Jane Smith, as you can see, a really quick login, and here we have a range of different tool sets that are right on the front face. So I'm immediately engaged with content that's relevant to me. I've been given a network, I've got some key dates, I've got some communities that I've already been made a part of, I've got some blogs that they think I'm going to find helpful, I've got an inquiry form which might be helpful to me, etc., etc. But instantaneously, I've got a range of different factors. I've also got a flag over here saying that there's some action required of me. Now that's really going to help me move through the recruitment journey. It may well be, for instance, that actually that's a piece of qualification that I need to prove. It might be that I need to accept my unconditional offer. Whatever it is, we can help move them through the system. I've also got notifications that are showing this kind of river of news of things that are happening to me. So I've been invited to the basketball community. I've been invited to microbiology. These are I'm already in motion. So although this is my first time in which I'm joining, I'm joining a train already in progress. If I pop into the profile for a second, again, I mentioned before that we take application data, social media, a range of other things. So we can grab a picture, we can grab some basic information in whatever realm that might be. We can help encourage the learner to complete their profile. But one of the major factors here, and Di mentioned it, is gamification. We want to offer these open badge structures just under this kudos summary, and indeed at the summary here, to show that actually I've been awarded some pieces already, and I've already made some progress to my movement on these. So these might help me move up the rank of actually earning prizes, earning points, and indeed encouraging my social adoption. If I win the badge for connecting with 10 other students, for instance, I might get the new network and newbie badge. And I can then promote that on social media and help raise the positive reputation of the institution from external media tools in a positive way, but actually driven from interior ones. And again, I've got a progress bar here that's showing I've got 179 points to the next level. So if I pop to my network, this is one of my true favorites in this. And granted, I'm only connected to one academic at the moment, so I've got to go and make my network. But here, it's recommending people I might know. People I may well be connected to on social media, people that are coming from my feeder school, or people that are from my hometown. Here are people that are interested and indeed are connected to me in some way. So I can actually send them an invitation, like I did before, my quick demonstration with Alberto, actually type my message, make sure I follow them, and then send the invitation out. So now I can get some more recommendations. And that's how I so quickly and easily build my network. And I hope you'd agree that actually what we find here is that there's no training required when giving this to the digital native generation. All of these tool sets are so commonplace in terms of their mentality. So if we think about communities for a second, I want to jump into the microbiology community. And this is very much going to look like virtual learning environment land. It can be skinned to look however you want, so you can have your branding, etc. But this is all the content for the microbiology unit at Brockenhurst College. And there's a range of forums, bookmarks, files, activities, surveys, media content over here, members. I can go into important bookmarks from other systems or external resources. Everything's kind of in one place. But it really keeps people centric. All of this is about, people who've liked things, people who've replied, who has replied, when was it moved, etc. So it's really empowering me to make sure things are people-centric, and then I can dig into more information about these people. If I click on this one, for instance, this quick forum about a question from prospective students about where they can do research on a really specific topic, I can then see those things, I can give it a like, I can give it a comment, I can add to it myself, whatever those things might be. I can be a part of this dynamic conversation in progress. Before we saw there was an activity set for me. So if I look into that in more detail, it's actually kind of light project management. So the academic, Alex, has assigned the three of us as prospective students a really quick piece of research work to do and then bring it back to base. And I can add a comment, I can add my to-do items, I can actually take more actions to actually notify other people. And we can collaborate in the cloud, an instant chat with my fellow colleagues to work on that project together. So we're automatically starting very light-handed work, but building a community, and again, those critical expectations. If I pop back to our main page, I've got my instant chat at the bottom here. So here I've got my available status, and I might have a range of different friendship networks, or indeed student support, so I can keep asking those bite-sized questions, just like we mentioned before. If I pop out of Jane just for a second, and indeed I've only covered the tip of the iceberg in terms of items we can do here, and I pop just into Alex, the academic here at the top, he is able to look at all of these metrics about which people have been engaged at what times with which content, what their participation engagement factors are, and indeed what is the most popular content that I've been creating so far. And with all of these metrics, not only can I see them here, but they can all be exported to other analytical systems, your CRM system, your MIS system, your VLE system, whatever you have. You can actually take all of this rich data in terms of who is engaging with what, and indeed with whom. And just like Di mentioned in her speech, this helps us understand how students are networked together, how they are influential over their fellow classmates in a feeder school, for instance, define their learning style. There's so much data you can pull from this that you just cannot pull from any form of marketing that you'll currently be doing, I am sure. So all of this information really empowers not only staff members to make bigger impact, but indeed marketing to intervene with those that are not engaging or predicted as not going to be coming to enrollment, and hence action can be taken. Let me just pop out of that and indeed pop back to our presentation. I'll just do that really quickly. There we are. So here, now that I've covered the Brockenhurst College demonstration, and indeed I have just covered the top line summary there, we'd be happy to show you a deeper dive demonstration should you want it. I won't cover any more questions that are coming through, but please do keep them coming through, and I'll cover them at the Q&A at the end. Let me just cover a really quick summary of where we've got to. So this perfect storm is really challenging the way in which we recruit students. It's our view that keeping warm and proactively participating with engaged students is the key to increasing student recruitment and improve applicant community, commitment, and conversion. And indeed, we've really seen terrific results from applicant engagement so far, from Brockenhurst, who of course you've already heard from, but indeed from many of our other clients too. If I show you a little bit more and just summarize our next steps, Exceptional Student Experience has been running for about 4 years now, and indeed Portal are an award-winning business partner that have been delivering it over that time. I myself worked as leading the education sector for IBM across Europe for the past 4.5 years, and in January of this year, IBM made the decision to continue to grow our success in education and enfranchise Exceptional Student Experience, my team, the assets over to Portal to make sure we could work with more agility. We had a larger team, but we still have all of the support and work hand in hand with the scale and resources of IBM behind us to make sure we can really deliver the best value for clients. Exceptional Student Experience is made up of these 3 areas of technology: digital marketing, predictive analytics, and social portal, of which you've seen a little bit of social portal today. And what we've done is we've taken those across the 3 major challenges that we always hear in education: recruitment, retention, and reputation, and delivered some phenomenal results with these 9 off-the-shelf managed service modules. Now, these can be taken individually, in a combination, or in its entirety in order to be a complete transformation approach. Our clients so far are seeing great results, like 20% increase in recruitment, 25% reduction in retention, or dropouts rather, and 30% increase in reputation. Today, we've just covered applicant engagement, but those same kind of social portal technologies we've extended and applied to the retention side of things, and indeed education delivery on campus. We're happy to share more information about that too. But if I move on very quickly, just to cover some of the aspects of our next steps, and indeed what we are going to do for you over that time.